Hey everybody! So today we're going to continue on with the idea that retrograde planets might actually be more comfortable in their traditional sign of detriment and less comfortable in their traditional sign of home. Now, in the last video, I kind of went into all of this, but there's a blog post attached to this video. If you are watching it on YouTube, you should just be able to click the link and go straight to the blog post. If you are watching this on Instagram, you might have to copy and paste the link or actually type in the link because Instagram is a pain in the fucking ass with links. I wish they changed this. But there's a table of, where planets are, what signs planets are traditionally at home or domicile in. What signs planets are traditionally considered in detriment. To give you an idea, in case you aren't familiar with this, it gives you an idea of where the planets typically are thought of as being comfortable and uncomfortable, essentially, or functioning well or easily, and then maybe functioning in a more challenging way in detriment. Now, let me also say that while I don't ever see this talked about, specifically what I'm talking about here, I don't ever really see it mentioned. I also want to bring up, I think that home placements, detriment placements, exaltation placements, and fall placements, I think they're important to look at and to take into consideration. I'm not ride or die with them though, and by that I mean I don't hinge my entire reading of a planet based on if it's in home or domicile, if it's detriment, if it's exalted, or if it's in fall. I do not hinge my entire reading of a planet on this. I know that there are people that are very ride or die about this, and they do, and that's fine. I do not. So this perspective is coming from somebody who, while certainly does take these dignities into consideration when I read, I do take them into consideration. I don't hinge my whole reading of a planet on this. So I'm just letting you know where my frame of mind, where I'm coming from as I'm sharing this. That might be different than where you come from. That's absolutely fine. You may be the sort of person that doesn't fuck with them at all, and that's fine too. Whatever works for you as you're learning, as you're reading, I'm all about that. Whatever works for the person. But this is something that I don't know if you do mess with them, if you do read, if you do take a look at them kind of like I do, at least take them into consideration. Or even if you read, or especially if you read them, if you hinge a lot of the reading on a planet of a planet on being home in a home placement, detriment placement, exalted placement, or fall placement, this might really be something you might want to play with. And yeah, the notion that a planet might be home somewhere by direct motion, and it might be home somewhere, or it might be in detriment somewhere by direct motion. When you throw a retrograde into the mix, when you turn that planet around and it becomes a retrograde planet, it might actually flip it to where the planet becomes more comfortable in the detriment placement and less comfortable in the home placement. I'm not going to talk about exaltations and fall placements here. Just domicile and detriment. Just those for right now. I'm still playing around with the other ones. But in the last video I talked about Mercury and Venus. I guess here let's start with Saturn. We can start with Saturn. Saturn direct, or Saturn in general, is thought of as being at home in Capricorn. If you don't use modern rulership, or you use both traditional and modern rulership, it's also at home in Aquarius. It is considered to be in detriment in Cancer. So we'll be looking at the home placement being Capricorn here, since the detriment placement is Cancer on the opposite of the axis. Now, Saturn direct is very, very comfortable in Capricorn. It is very, very comfortable there. It's comfortable expressing its responsibility in Capricorn. It's comfortable expressing its mastery in Capricorn. It is very comfortable in Capricorn, right? And Saturn direct is not nearly as comfortable in Cancer, because Cancer is more, it's more sensitive, it's more emotional, it's more nurturing. And Saturn may have a difficult time naturally expressing its mastery and authority and things like that in Cancer. Doesn't have to, right? But it could play out that way. But if you turn Saturn retrograde needs to go. Okay, the big deal for Saturn retrograde people, they really do need to be creating the reality that actually serves them, and living that reality, not relying on living on someone else's version of reality. And I'm not talking, I know that sounds kind of batshit when I say that, so let me try to explain what I mean. Like, Saturn retrograde, a lot of the times when you see Saturn retrograde in the chart, this isn't universal, but oftentimes you'll see issues with the family, and the family, like, trying to instill their version of how this person should live their life, how this person should create their reality, is usually more along the lines of the status quo, and Saturn retrograde needs to break away from that. Generally, they need to break away from that. So Capricorn is more status quo energy. It is. I mean, it is. It's a lot of things, but it can be more. It can align more with that. So Saturn retrograde in Capricorn can have a difficult time. Creating the reality that it wants for itself, creating the life that it wants for itself. Just because Capricorn is more status quo energy, it doesn't always function that way, but it can. It's more structured. Perhaps the Saturn retrograde person needs to deconstruct some of that structure, which it might have a hard time doing if it's in Capricorn. So from retrograde motion, Saturn may not be as comfortable in Capricorn. However, in Cancer, it might actually be more comfortable. Cancer, right? Cancer is it is sensitive. It is emotional. It is nurturing. It's really the nurturing part that I want to tap into here, though, because there is a nurturing that happens when somebody starts operating from their Saturn. If they have Saturn retrograde in their chart and they start functioning from the retrograde motion, there is something nurturing about this for the person. There really is, because they are tapping into the way that they need to be creating their reality in the first place, the life that they need to be living. They're able to tap into that. And so there is something about it falling in Cancer, Saturn retrograde falling in Cancer, that actually feels like it would be a more hospitable environment for Saturn retrograde to be able to do this. Cancer also, you don't have to think of natural rulership. It does have an affinity for the 4th house. It does. An affinity is there. Can't deny that. You don't have to think of it as a natural ruler, but there is an affinity there. So 4th house is like core, right? It's like it's a lot of things, but it's like the core, your core. And having that affinity with Cancer energy, there's like something about Saturn retrograde in Cancer that makes me think the person might have an easier time tapping into what they really need at their core. What kind of reality they really need to have at their core. What type of reality they need to crystallize for themselves at their core. even stuff with family, right? Because Cancer does have an affinity for family stuff too. Perhaps the person with Saturn retrograde in Cancer has an easier time deconstructing family values or family things, family shit that they need to get rid of. They might have an easier time doing this. They might. I could see it going that way. I think it's easier in Cancer than it is in Capricorn, though. That is for sure. So that's an example with Saturn. Okay, and I'll do Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter is considered at home in Sagittarius. It's also at home in Pisces. If you use both rulerships, traditional and modern, Jupiter also was the ruler of Pisces, so Jupiter is at home in Pisces too. But we'll be looking at Sagittarius here primarily because Jupiter is considered in detriment in Gemini. So we'll be looking at the Sagittarius Gemini part of this primarily. But so Jupiter direct, or they say Jupiter in general, is comfortable in Sagittarius, and it's a little uncomfortable in Gemini. I would believe this is true for Jupiter direct, absolutely. However, Jupiter retrograde, I feel like is a little different. Jupiter retrograde people, and I won't talk about this one too long because I've talked about it in other videos, like tying in with the GC and stuff, but Jupiter retrograde people, they can see the big picture. They can usually see the big picture real easily. They have intuitions about things. They will know things before they know them, before they know why they know them from a logical and rational place. But there is a knowing there. They know things. These people know things. But they have to, from backwards motion, kind of like reading a magazine backwards, or reading a book backwards, figure out why they know what they know from a logical and rational place. Now, in Sagittarius is a big picture sign, right? Jupiter retrograde feels like it could get very lost in Sagittarius, or have a difficult time actually being able to break things down from backwards motion, or apply logic and reason easily to what they know. I could almost see a Jupiter retrograde person in Sagittarius, and this isn't universal, but I could see it happening where the person, they know something, but they can't fucking figure out why they know what they know, and they don't try to work it backwards. So then you're left with this, I know what I know, but I don't know how to communicate it or how to make sense of it. So in Sagittarius, Jupiter retrograde feels like it could get lost, whereas in Gemini, where Jupiter is traditionally in detriment, it feels like Jupiter RX could actually have an easier time both knowing what it knows, right? Knowing what it knows to be true, getting intuitive hits, things like that, being able to see the big picture, but yet at the same time, being able to break things down backwards to actually have logic and reason on the side of why they know what they know, rather than them just saying, oh, I know this is true, but not being able to back it up, which I find is an issue, can be an issue for Jupiter retrograde people, not being able to back up why they know what they know. And that's great. Usually they're right. I find oftentimes usually they're right with what they do know, what they do into it. But the thing is, a lot of people want proof of why you know what you know, or why are you saying this, and they want more than I just feel like this is right. Usually the Jupiter retrograde person needs more than that too. So, and that's helpful for their own self-esteem to be able to back it up. It's usually very helpful. So it seems like in Gemini, Jupiter retrograde would have an easier time doing the logic and reason thing, trying to figure that out from backwards motion. Anyway, I'm gonna get going because this video got kind of long, but definitely check out the blog post because it goes into more of this stuff than I've got time to do here, or that I want to take time to do here. But definitely take a look at it. Play around with retrogrades in your own chart or other charts of people that you know and see if it fits. I mean, You may find that it doesn't. You may be like, this bitch is crazy. But I don't know, think about it and play around with it and see if it fits for you, fits for people that you know, people that have retrograde planets and they are in their traditional signs of detriment. Does that retrograde planet maybe function better, more easily? Same thing with retrograde planets that happen to be in a home placement. Do they maybe seem to have more of a difficult time than they should because they're in their home placement? Just some things to consider, think about. Okay, so if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Abaturno Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like our videos or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit, Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.